I'm Prashant. I work with MCCI, but also I'm a volunteer with Pune International Center for the last 12 odd years. So I'm associated with PIC. I have interacted with some of you in past. My colleague Abhay is doing a wonderful job over the last couple of years as director. But for whatever reason, he decided that today he just wanted to relax for the next 5 minutes, and he said, I should do this introduction. I said, I'm happy to do this. Now that there is a mic, I should take a couple of minutes, right? I recollect the day when Dr. Kholkar was doing this meeting with Dr. Mashilkar and told him that we should have a specific program on social innovation in PIC. So PIC is a think tank supposed to do public policy. It does to the extent that it does. And that's what Dr. Kholkar mentioned, Dr. Mashilkar. Two of them thought for a couple of minutes, and they made a phone call. And they called a gentleman and said, you should come from Ahmedabad to Pune, and you should help us shape up the social innovation program. Now, it so happens that gentleman was my professor in the college where I studied, Professor Anil Gupta. So he came, and they decided the first social innovation conference. So it went on for 7-8 years. In one of those conferences, I think my younger and brighter co-alumnus, Hitendra Singh, was kind of organizing this function. And Dr. Mashilkar mentioned a couple of points. He said, one, rather than just doing a program, which is a moment, let's make it a movement. So there should be enough happening through the year. And second, Dr. Kholkar mentioned on the same day that we need to have a mentorship program. So Hitendra picked that up, and we created a mentorship program. In Pune, it's a well-known culture, right? And it's cool to kind of go around, say that it's a Ganeshotsav, we take Vargani from everyone, and we create a festivity. That's what we started. It spread all over the country. So it's easy for us to go knock on the door of few people. You might be intelligent, you might be busy, you might be wealthy. It doesn't matter. We need your time. We need your time because we are trying to do some public good, and we want you to contribute in it. And people do contribute. That's the culture of Pune. We've seen in MCCI, TIE, NASCOM, PIC, everywhere. And thanks to that, we now for the past few years, Hitendra worked on it. We had a couple more people working now. Neeraj is running this. We have a bunch of mentors. Now these mentors, selflessly, they're kind of dedicating their time to help social innovators, young social innovators, right? Some of them have traveled all the way in Vidarbha to see what the social innovator is doing. They are busy enough in their own activities, but they have a detailed scheduled program where they are helping the social innovator on one dimension or another, whether it's a marketing or procurement or business development or strategy or finances. While all of that was happening, they also came up with this idea that they need to publish more. And this is the publication that was released on 1st of January on the birthday of Mr. Innovation, Dr. Raghunath Mashilkar, sir. I'm not going to say anything about the book because they are going to talk about this. This was my bandwidth timeline, whatever time was given to me. What I'm going to do is just invite on stage Dina Kholkar, Sanjay Kanvinde, Gireendra Kasmalkar. We would be requesting Dina to conduct this panel discussion. The only thing I want to say is there is one thing common among all of them. They have had and continue to have great corporate career. But more importantly, like there was a gentleman called Mr. Joshi a century ago. He was called Sarvajanik Kaka in Pune. They all also have element of Sarvajanik Kaka, wanting to come forward and help and contribute, right? So huge round of applause for that from all of us. I hand it over to Dina to conduct this panel discussion. I'm happy to sit down and listen to this. And Neeraj, I must say it at the beginning itself, very well done. Over to you, Dina.
Thank you, Prashant, and good evening to all of you. Such a wonderful evening, and pleasure to have all of you attend this panel discussion. As Prashant said, this book was published and released on 1st of January, and I'm sure Dr. Mashilkar would have given them a target before you finish the month, we should have some event done around the book. So it is action leadership which is being seen over here very clearly. And it's good to see many of the authors who have contributed to this, and a few of them are here. But I just wanted to call out the authors of this publication. Amit Bhargava, who is here on the panel, Anil Kulkarni, Giri Kasmalkar, Pramod Athalye is here, Ram Iyer, Sandeep Chawda, Sanjay Kanvinde, and Shekhar Jadhav. So joining me today are Giri, Sanjay, and Amit. And I would probably take about 40 odd minutes with the questions that I have. Feel free to build up your questions. We'll keep a lot of time for you to interact with these folks. Keep in mind that they have been mentoring a lot of the startups which are part of the Social Innovation Lab, and they get to see what works, what doesn't work, what are the type of interesting problems they are solving. And I've been attending the National Conference of Social Innovation for many years now, and I've interacted with a lot of these startups. So very insightful journeys that we get to see. And here is a collection of journeys that they have captured. So, maybe let's get started. But before I start, I just wanted to call out, it's very coincident that I'm actually wearing a t-shirt which is made out of recycled PET bottles. So this is actually done by one of the subsidiaries of Other Poonawalla. The Serum Institute has a unit. You know that they run a very large program called the APCCI, Other Poonawalla Clean City Initiative. And Mr. Krishnan, who is the CEO, was kind enough to gift me one of these. But quite interesting to see that there are these type of examples which are becoming very much part of the society, and people are accepting it. And I'm sure we'll have very interesting products discussed today. So Sanjay, let me start off with you. I know that the Social Innovation Lab has been mentoring a lot of these startups. You've been involved with interacting with a lot of them. But tell us the genesis about this playbook and how did it come about, and just give us more details about the journey of putting this together.
Yeah, thanks, Dina. So I think to understand the context of the work behind this book, it's probably helpful to just step back and see where PIC is driving this for the last many years. So as Prashant mentioned, NCSI was started 11 years ago, and that gave an amazing platform, national platform, to entrepreneurs both in the urban, tribal, and rural areas. So that's become quite a nice event where 18 entrepreneurs are showcased every year for the last 11 years. So that was sort of the genesis, and PIC very deliberately, as part of its charter, made this as a area of focus or one of the main pillars of effort. So that drives a lot of the action. Second, what happened is around 8 years ago, after 3 years of NCSI, we started mentoring program. So out of the 18 people who are at the national conference, we offer them opportunity to get mentored, and they decide to be mentored or not to be mentored. Usually we have run average of 10 per batch we mentor, and it's quite a long 6 to 9 month, very detailed process. A lot of those have become very famous now over the last 8 years. Many of them have become exporting internationally and so on and so forth. So that was 8 years ago, and then a couple of years ago, Pramod is here. He's sort of the conscience of the group. He keeps asking us, what more can we do? What more can we do? And we started a shared service center. So we are very fortunate in Pune to have an ecosystem of very good partners, lawyers, CAs, etc. And PIC has partnered with them. So they help these companies in very pointed action items that we recommend as mentors, saying, hey, you would benefit to have a different legal structure. Then we involve the right people. And PIC, fortunately, through some sponsorship, has a small budget, so we can actually offer this for free. So that was the third thing we did. And then again, Pramod kept asking, what more can we do? That's where we started writing blogs. Essentially, what they do is they have captured the horizontal knowledge across the 80 companies we have mentored, 80 entrepreneurs we have mentored. And they cover all kinds of topics like finance, legal structure, product roadmap. Anil is here. He's an expert in customer centricity, these type of topics which we have written in the blog. And then the question became like, okay, so we have done the horizontal part, and we'll probably continue to do that over the next few years, cover a lot of topics. That's where Giri actually came up saying, what next? Let's focus on the vertical part. So that's how we picked a vertical topic like waste to wealth, and we said, what have we learned over the last 8 years? And that's how this book was launched. So hopefully that gives you a bit of context. It's a work in progress. It's a continuation, and we have a lot of other things planned to do over the next couple of years. But this is the first vertical book we have launched. So I hope that gives you a bit of context.
No, it's absolutely wonderful to hear that you're focusing on the vertical aspect, because after the NCSI happened, the last one in November, I was having a discussion with Dr. Kholkar, and I was giving him the recommendation saying that, the urban, rural, and tribal is not necessarily very relevant, because you're just trying to force fit. Instead of that, let's look at verticalizing our approach towards the conference itself. And in that context, we have actually started reaching out to CSR heads of various companies, and then look at the patterns of which areas do they focus on, and then create a cohort of people who are working in health, education, women empowerment, and so on and so forth. So Giri, let me move on to you next. So how is this playbook different? We discussed, I read through some of the elements of why it was to be called a playbook, and the various terms which we discussed as well. But before you go into that, I would also like you to give a little bit more context on the triple E startups, because that was one thing which was called out very clearly. So maybe you start off with that and then go back to the question, that is, how different is this?
Sure. But before I do that, I'll just address one of the things that was mentioned Prashant mentioned in our introduction about being the Sarvajanik Kaka. I don't mind being called Kaka, maybe Amit does, but the point about that is that all of us, have been doing this for many years now, 6-7 years. And frankly, it's an extremely enjoyable activity. You wouldn't do it just because you're trying to do some social service or something. I personally do not like this phrase giving back at all, because unless you like it, you would not do it, correct? And Sanjay runs a fund, I run a fund. We are all involved with startups in many different ways, as you all know. The thing that we found interesting, just adding on to whatever you said about how this happened, was that these are all social enterprises, right? They're working on typically they will have the same issues related to scale and sustainability and all of that, which we are anyway doing in our professional work. And that's why we can actually help, because we are doing that. What is different is the problems that they're working on. These problems are something that you would never run into. And that's what makes it really interesting and exciting. So that's what has kept us going, I think. So, you would call us Sarvajanik Kaka or whatever, but I think that I must thank all the colleagues that work in that team, the PIC team, Archita and Samruddhi are here, Neeraj is here, and the many other people that were before, Hitendra you mentioned, and so on. That has kept the activity going, because it has been really a pleasure to work on these things. So that, let me get that, if I say that first. I think Sanjay referred to this fact that Pramod said what we should do next, and it was in my mind anyway, and I immediately said, I think they will remember, that let's do a playbook. So that is what, and the trigger for that actually had come a couple of years back. And one of the startup that we are mentoring, I think it was again Pramod, was doing pens from bamboos. And Anant, what's his name was. And he was being told that pens are commodities, how can you sell them at what price and so on. And they were telling you should reduce the price and then they will sell. And the advice we ended up giving them is, instead of selling them cheap, you sell them more at a premium, because these are made by tribals who are in that area and so on. Give that story behind that pen and not just the pen. That was done some 2-3 years back, but that had been in my mind for a long time. And when he said that, because this was something that was very relevant to this space of trying to do some best wealth and create employment and so on. So these were the kind of ideas that triggered my mind, that when he said that, what can we do new? I said, let us do a playbook of all the activities that we have done in this particular space. And it was in my mind. So that's how this got triggered and started. So now let me come to the point of triple E. So we talked about horizontal versus vertical. And it actually turned out that we were doing things that not even in one vertical. Not one horizontal, not one vertical. It was actually a combination of multiple things. And yes, waste to wealth is something that is very commonly understood. Circular economy is something that is very commonly understood. But what we were doing is actually a little bit beyond that. What we are saying is, yes, there will be some environmental problem is being solved. Some people are, have the passion for that there is waste and that is causing havoc with the environment. Let us fix that. So, for example, we have one called Earth Tattva, which deals with ceramic. And then what do you do with the waste ceramic? And then he built something that could be recycled. On the other hand, this is that environment kind of a point. But then there were others who were not really doing anything with the environment, but the ecology itself. I mean, we had one Mr. Umbale, if you all remember, Janta, what is it? Janta's Nagri, Shramik Janta. Thank you, Arjun. So what was he doing? He was actually trying to give employment to people who were Katkaris in the Satara district. And that was his starting point. And what did he come up with? He said that these people were doing fishing and the lakes were close to them because somebody that went to a private ownership. So how do I create employment for them? And then he said that these guys could do harvesting of wild honey. And then he went to DST, got that right technique of doing it, what he calls non-violently. That is, not burning the hive or something like that, cutting only 75% of it so that it grows back again. So this is the ecology aspect of it. There was no environmental issue. This is an ecology aspect. Think about it. If the guys were burning those hives, the bees would go away. And it would have a great impact on the ecology there because on the plants, pollination, the bees are required and so on. So we were thinking that this space is, there are multiple facets to it. Somebody's thinking of ecology, somebody's thinking of environment, somebody's thinking of just creating employment. And that seemed like a very good space. And when we looked at the list of companies that we had done, it turned out there were 9 of them over the many years. So that is where we thought of, let us not call it just circular economy or waste to wealth, although these are terms better known and hence they are in the title, but it's more than that. And that's why we ended up calling it ecology, environment and employment kind of startups, and that's why the triple E.
So the question about how different this is, and let's say, for example, if it was done by somebody who was an expert in waste management, and they putting together a research like this, because all of you are working in different fields and not necessarily having that expertise. So how different is it? What could potentially be the viewpoints that you would have because you are done it?
To be honest, this idea, like the genesis was this. So it was not as if we had started out with the objective of writing a playbook. If it was that, then we would have really looked out and done a literature survey of how playbooks are written, how the literature survey is done, what all things have happened in the past, and so on and so forth. And that would have been really something worth doing. What we did, as a reviewer ended up saying, this was experiential learning. So what we thought that we had learned through these years, we thought it could be helpful to somebody in just sharing the experience. It was never an idea that, and that was a debate about this term playbook, that are you being prescriptive? Are you telling them what to do? And that most of us felt that it will not work that way. And it is indeed true that it will not work. That's one part of it. Second part of it, that you do all the research, you look at all the things that have happened and create a really solid playbook. But we have not even looked at that. What we thought was whatever we have done could be useful to somebody to a certain extent. Even to the extent of a startup and a social entrepreneur feels that whatever he or she is doing, he's not the only one in the world to think of that. There are other people who have done this kind of things and they have gone through the same kind of routine. They have faced the same kind of challenges. And that knowledge that these challenges, there are other people who are doing this, there are other similar challenges they have faced, there are people who could help with that, itself could be very useful. And in fact, that's why we've ended up saying in the preface itself that don't think of this as solving your problem, but think of it as beginning the thinking, so that if you really feel that there is something to be asked, ask us, call us, we will have that discussion about your specific problem that might end up in an actual solution for this. So in that sense, to the question that you asked, it is different from the academic playbooks for sure. There are definitely things that are not there and maybe should be there but not there. And we certainly look forward to it being helpful, and that's why this event is quite useful, that it reaches out to people that there is something like this, and if anybody is interested in working on this, then there is things that, people that you could meet or places that you could go to. If that purpose is served, then also I think we would have done that. So that's the difference between the academic playbooks and what we have tried to do.
Sanjay wants to add something.
I just add one perspective to this. I mean, there's a lot of these kind of publications published in Europe. Stanford has published quite a bit of work. A lot of it tends to be quite academic and very interesting from an academic perspective. But like as Giri said, this is very experiential. And I've read quite a few of these over the years. There are three things which strike me as quite unique about this piece of work. One is it's very founder-centric. So we're not trying to address the whole world. We want founders to pick this up and use it in their day-to-day journey. So it's very founder-centric. Second is we have an amazing group of mentors who have a very deep experience across different domains, be it finance, marketing, product design, etc. So that I think it's a very deep 360 view of the problem. It may not be a very deep view of every problem, but it's a holistic view of a problem, which is really useful to an entrepreneur who's trying to deal with multiple issues. And the third aspect of this is we have kept it extremely practical. They can use it tomorrow in their journey. And I think Amit will probably go into the details of that. But those three things are quite unique when you look at the mass of these kind of publications out there.
Great, Sanjay and Giri, thanks for your inputs on this. So about a couple of years back, TCS, when I was in TCS, we ran an ideation initiative called TCS Sustainathon. And the topic we had chosen was waste management. And obviously APCCI, PMC, PKC, PIC were all partners in that. But I actually wanted to understand what really happens on waste management. So I went through with Janwani, with Swachh, actually went on visits to see how they actually do the waste management, the recycling. And there are few of them who are part of that initiative. So it was quite amazing to learn about the type of opportunities which are there. So, my question to Amit, and I know obviously you have got a good understanding of these enterprises which are into the waste to wealth. Tell us about what is a sort of a template which is there. What type of risks do they have as a business? What are the learnings? What are the things that work? What doesn't work? So, I think for the audience, this will be like an encyclopedia of what happens in this space.
Thanks for building the pressure on me and asking that I describe this. But I'll
after the first 2 wickets are down, right?
Yeah.
The one down is Rahul Dravid. He has to bat for long.
Okay. So I look forward to that challenge. We started off with a slight perspective on what is the typical workflow or the process flow which a startup of this nature follows or should follow. And if you look at it, it's actually true for any enterprise, but it comes out with particular points for an enterprise of this nature, right? So it starts off with some environment, ecological or employment problem which the person wants to address. And that identification is very important, and it goes from there onwards into next phase, which is the ideation phase, right? And we kind of mapped out the entire life cycle which an idea of such nature follows, and it goes down to initial funding which the startup needs, the product market fit, through to stabilizing operations, making those initial forays into the market to see whether the idea holds good. It also involves deciding the structure of your organization and those finer points which go on to defining what the organization comes out to be eventually. But through this journey, what we thought would be very useful to either a startup which is just, or a individual who has just thought of an idea, or of a person who might be somewhere along the way in this, is that we should highlight what are the common risks which are associated with each of these process steps, and what in our collective experience are some of the risk mitigation or alleviation strategies which we have found have helped in the past. Now, we are not saying that if you have this kind of risk, this will definitely help you, but we have provided kind of guidelines to help in that situation. So I'll take one example, right? The founder's vision in this has to be very clear in terms of what is the problem he wants to solve. But founders tend to be a little unidimensional in terms of the entire gamut of activities which you have to take up for an enterprise. So then we discovered that choosing co-founders who have complementary skills is very essential in this type of startup. So that was a risk which we identified, and we recommend that it should look at various kinds of people with complementary skills who you should take forward with this enterprise, right? So in short, what we did is we classified the entire process flow, and in that process flow, wherever we found that we had observed certain risks, we highlighted those risks and what were the mitigation strategies therein, right? So that has been the crux of what we attempted to do. But also, like Sanjay and Giri mentioned, we have seen various enterprises go through this journey, right? So what we also try to bring out in this playbook is what has worked well for some of these startups, and more importantly, it generally goes that you might have done a lot of things well, but your startup has still not succeeded. So we decided to focus even on the factors that did not go so well, and how can they be avoided, right? So I'll just give you a small example of what worked well, right? So if you consider the entire product market fit, or for example, I'll use a live example which we we mentored a startup which is called Pirul Handicrafts. Enterprising set of entrepreneurs who decided that in the Uttarakhand area, one of the most abundantly available raw material which should be used is pine needles, right? And they came up with the concept that they would train a set of tribal women, empower them to come up with handicrafts based on, made out of these pine needles, and then they would sell them, right? Now, in their whole journey, they discovered that for their setup to be successful, it would make sense to be closer to the source of raw material, right? So that is what we have discovered in this journey, that one of the important factors is being as close to the source of raw material. And then even though the entire packaging and transportation cost might work out, but that has been one of the practices which has helped, right? Similarly, if we come to things which have not worked well, right? And a classic point which I think almost all startups face is what should be the organization structure, right? Do you get incorporated as a private organization, or do you go for a Section 8 company? Do you make yourself CSR fund eligible? So depending upon what is the nature of the startup, what is the nature of your end product going to be, you have to choose your structure based on certain guidelines, and we have kind of summarized those guidelines in this playbook, right? So as these people already mentioned, it's a very experiential playbook. We have highlighted things that we have observed from our startups. And trust me, when you interact with these startups, it's always been a learning experience for each one of us. And what the collective, lessons that we've learned from these startups, we've tried to, encapsulate them in this playbook. And, and we hope that it will be helpful for both types of people who have an idea but don't know where to get started, or people who have already embarked on this journey but are facing roadblocks or they require mid-course corrections. They should also benefit from this.
So one question I had, and probably any one of you can respond, it's just more of a, because waste was the raw material, right, which we were talking about for any of the products. Were you concerned about regulations? Were you concerned about organizations which were keeping on watch on what happens to that product, that the waste which is there? Was that, because I did not see that part being brought into the playbook, because that potentially is a risk. Just as an example, I was reading about one startup which is using cigarette butts and recycling them and making various products out of it. It is a health hazard, okay, because you have tobacco fumes which are going through it, and they're using it in different products, including toys and stuff like that. Obviously, they must be going through a lot of cleaning process and stuff like that, because that is one of the areas where I felt that we could have looked at it, because waste as a topic itself has a taboo associated in the society, and when we have products which have come in from waste. So just as it's like a surprise question for all.
No, I'll just say that this is the takeaway for us from this session. So this time that you're spending here is actually worthwhile now, because this is exactly what we're looking for, the feedback that you get, and you have given an excellent one. So I'll just make that comment if Sanjay has done. No, that's it. Because this is
the reason is because it is linked to the question which I wanted to ask you, Sanjay, about, from PIC we make a lot of policy recommendations, and one of the key elements of putting this together would also to be making certain policy recommendations. Now, when you have taken waste, within waste itself there are multiple sub-verticals, and each one of them have a different connotation, regulation attached to it. So how do you look at the entire policy recommendation space itself, if you can give a view on that, Sanjay?
Yeah, so PIC being a think tank, we also have an obligation to always think about, policy inputs to the government, either at the local level, the state level, or the national level, and various topics. PIC always gives input through our own channels. Sometimes they take a long time to enact, but it is our key obligation is to give that feedback. And as we have done in this paper, also having interacted with 80 companies and resolved hundreds of problems, small problems, we always used to think like, what would be a policy intervention that would make this problem go away, not only for this company, but hundreds of such companies. So that's what led to the chapter on the policy interventions. And very briefly, we have covered how we can accelerate further the innovation ecosystem. So one of the recommendations we have made is to designate 5 incubators as focused on this theme itself, because you require a lot of depth around, regulatory inputs and so on and so forth. So we require that, and we have suggested to allocate, 10 crores to each of these 5 centers, which is a small amount of money in the overall startup ecosystem. And we have also suggested to designate one center as the national lead on this topic, which should continuously capture the knowledge from the experiences nationally and feedback into the various policy-making institutions. So that's the first one, is on the startup ecosystem. The second one is really on accelerating market formation. So government has a lot of procurement power, but you can see it's very lethargic. Actually, when I look at our companies in the portfolio of PIC, it's actually the private sector which is driving a lot of this. And even for, waste is one of these problems where there's a huge overlap with government services. So unless government is very creative about engaging in these topics, it's a bit hard for a lot of these startups. So they can work with private enterprises, no doubt, and that works very nicely. But so we suggest an acceleration review of procurement policies across all levels of the government. Another very big topic which is very interesting is on skilling. I think India is putting a lot of emphasis on skilling, but when we look at our companies that have grown to 50 plus, recruiting is a big challenge. So we have to find a way to create a skilled labor for these companies as they grow from 5 to 10 to 50 to 100 to 500. That's happening already. The third area is capital formation. There's a lot of capital available for startups, but startups in this space struggle for capital. So I think government has been very smart actually over the last 5 years. They have created this concept of fund of funds. So they will say people like Sanjay, okay, you can create a 100 crore fund. We'll give you only 20 crores, but you bring 80 crores. So we have funds of funds like that. And I think we have to take a part of that money, fund of funds, and allow funds to be created in this space to accelerate this national journey. So that's the third recommendation we make. The fourth is actually on awareness. I think there's a lot of awareness work to be also done. People need to be more aware of the challenges on this, and so we make some suggestions along that. So we have 5 different categories of policy recommendations, which hopefully we will also feed back through our contacts and connections and all the interactions we have with the government. And Dr. Kholkar was very clear in his request that there must be a very strong section on policy inputs. And fortunately, we had the experience in the group where we are able to extrapolate from 3 interventions of a particular kind to think about a policy intervention that could actually multiply 100x and apply to 300 companies. So that's what we have done in the policy section.
So one thing which during the discussion which came out, and I think Giri, you mentioned about storytelling and telling about the product itself. What I found useful about this t-shirt, there is a nice QR code. I actually scan it and it tells me the entire process of how it has been made, including the patent that they have on the entire process and the different types of uniqueness that it has. And I'd actually experienced this. I had actually taken a lot of artistic work from Gond paintings, as they call it, from Madhya Pradesh, and had given it to my alumni in the Bay Area. And my wife actually very nicely put together a write-up on each of those. They found it very useful to read about it, read about the artist, read about the unit which is doing it. So I think maybe worthwhile to look at this particular area, because we are not very good in this area. And especially if we are talking about these products going overseas, people are very keen to know about the entire process, where did it come from, and so on. So I thought I'll just bring this particular point since it came out as one of the points that Giri mentioned.
We've noticed this multiple times. Storytelling is a very powerful accelerant. And we have companies, people are buying products from New Zealand, Australia, US, but that storytelling aspect is very critical. And it's a very practical thing. It's the difference between getting, $10 versus $50. The product maybe just be...
Or you need to partner with brands like Chanel.
That's all. Well, I don't know about Chanel, but it's a very critical part of storytelling. I think Giri was talking about the pen story also, right? If you tell a very low-level story, they'll compare you to a plastic pen and say, 10 rupees mein do, 12 rupees mein do. Suddenly, nobody's going to give you 300 rupees for a pen if you don't tell the ecology story properly. Yeah. And so that's...
And also, one of the things which we have seen very, it's a trend last 5 to 8 years is the topic of ESG and people talking about sustainable development goals and looking at specifically what goals are you enabling through each of the products. That's the other dimension of it. So maybe it's worthwhile to look at these dimensions in the recommendations.
Absolutely.
So Amit, I'll come to you again. It's more to look at these, you talked about the cohort that you have, which you are mentoring. But the objective of putting together something like this is to go beyond that cohort, right? You will have a limited bandwidth, but how could people who are not part of your mentoring group benefit from this playbook?
Yeah. So fantastic question. When we started off with the mentorship program, we realized that we also had limited bandwidth within available with us, right? So we like stated before, we do follow a formal mentorship program where we consult startups. But what about those who are not part of that, and how could we benefit them, right? So that is why we structured this playbook along certain dimensions, which would appeal to, like I said, the two categories of people, either people who have just at the ideation stage or have embarked on that. So there are some components of the playbook which would appeal to these people. The first of them is the detailed process flow, right? The process flow which covers the aspects which you have to go about when forming the organization, and the steps about the thought process which have to be followed. In the case of entrepreneur just starting off on his journey, it provides a complete list. But even if a person has embarked on his journey and he realizes that he has not covered some aspect, it is a good reference point for him to go and consider that aspect. So that is one. The other good part about this is that the mentors here have provided a checklist, sort of checklist at the end, which deals with each of these process steps and what are essentially the things which you should have covered in that area, right? So that serves as a ready reckoner for all these entrepreneurs to go back and introspect as to whether they have considered all the aspects or not. Obviously, looking at it, we anticipate and we hope that we do get, people reading this do reach out to us in case, they want to get certain help on a particular aspect. And I don't think any mentor at PIC will shy away from extending the necessary help, right? So these are some of the ways in which we anticipate that even though an entrepreneur may not be a part of our formal mentorship program, these are the major takeouts which that person should take from this. I think the lessons of what worked well, what has not worked, will be something which entrepreneurs can anyway identify with, because a lot of people would have experienced that in their journey. And sometimes, it's that way that, if you have experienced something and you read it in a sort of playbook which kind of collaborates with what you have experienced, then you at least know that you are on the right track or you need a mid-course correction, right? So those are some of the
How have these these startups committed towards continuing the journey with us with the playbook? Have they committed towards sharing their stories, or if somebody wants to reach out to them? I've went through some of these stories.
Yeah.
If I'm outside the cohort, but I would like to connect not necessarily with the mentors, but directly with the founders itself.
Yeah. So when we were coming up with this playbook, we thought of certain startups which fell into this area, and we individually reached out to them. And not surprisingly, they were very forthcoming with their information and everything. So we at PIC have a full, complete database of all these startups. So in case anybody reading this playbook feels the need that he wishes to reach out to a particular startup, I think he can contact the PIC team, or he can you can do a Google search and you can find out, and you can always make a reference to this playbook. So I don't think that should be too much of an issue when it comes to reaching out.
Yeah, one more thing which I may want to call out is specifically on the 2 points. One is the waste to wealth, and the other one is the circular economy. So I would say that the circular economy part of it is not very well touched in the overall playbook. The reason I'm highlighting this specifically, I don't know any of you, when you travel to the airport in Mumbai, just as soon as you get off the BKC flyover, on both the sides you see a very good example of circular economy. Do you know what I'm referring to? This is the biggest market for all the spare parts of cars, trucks, and various other things. And it's actually amazing to see that. And it's an industry which has been flourishing for many, many years. sometimes we tend not to look at that sector at all because we are always excited about the new things which are coming up, the startups and stuff like that. But it may be worthwhile for us to look at, and maybe I may want to have your views as well, specifically around the learnings, because India as a culture itself has been known to have a circular economy right from home itself, right? So given that the industry is so well developed, is there an opportunity for us to look at that space? More so I'm calling out on the circular economy part of it. So Giri or Sanjay, Amit, any thoughts?
Yeah.
See, like Sanjay earlier said, the way we work is through founders, correct? So it's not that we are driving the founders to say, okay, you start this or start that. So, but for sure, the problems are there, the solutions are there, and we are seeing founders that are coming up with different kinds of ideas which are exactly around that the idea that you mentioned, that there are things, and this who was that Mumbai-based company was doing recycling of all the waste, and they've done really recircle.
Yeah.
So there are founders who are doing that, and that should be our job to help the founders and encourage the founders, rather than we are ourselves driving that.
Yeah.
And that is happening. So what I'm glad to say here is that is indeed happening, and these founders are doing really a good job. The founders that we are dealing with are actually doing a good job of doing exactly that. This book is, like I was saying, he's calling it a playbook. I hope I can, thanks for that point, and I hope I can address it to a certain extent. What we are trying to do here is, of all the startups that we mentored, can we find out a pattern which will help other startups who are trying to do the same thing? So if they are trying to solve an ecological problem, they're trying to solve an environmental problem, and in the process they're trying to create employment, then those are the kind of companies that we looked at. There were 9 such companies, and from them we came out with what could be the general pattern of things that we could help them with. So what the book contains is the life cycle, that the flow chart of what all different steps that happen, number one. Then there is a section on what are the risks that typically happen, and what we have tried to do is link all of these sections. So if you look at the book, all these flow chart and all these steps in that will have the risk numbers marked in that particular stage, and then the risk then articulated in that next section. So some of them came in the reference. So one was Pirul, where the founders were doing something with the pine needles. I talked about Shramik Janta, which was solving the problem of employment of Katkaris by training them in wild honey harvesting. Then I talked about Earth Tattva, which was ceramics and so on. The broken ceramics, they were recycling to make new ceramic products, for example. So I was hoping that we mention them in passing rather than this being a discussion of those 9 companies. You must read the book. So there are 9 different products, 9 different companies that we have talked about, but you get the flavor in terms of what kind of companies we are talking about here. Bamboo pens we talked about. This created employment for the tribals who created bamboo pens. So hopefully this is a teaser rather than a complete presentation of the book. That's what these kind of events are supposed to be, and we hope that ultimately we are looking for feedback. So this was good feedback about the event, but what we are looking for is the feedback for the books and the ideas that are presented, and you must read the book just to complete that flow of it. So the risks were how you could address some of those things based on and then there was a link to all the blogs that Sanjay mentioned, all the blogs that have been written so far. There is a reference for each of the risks to what kind of blog that has been written on it. Coming down this, what works and what didn't work. So to me, that section is essentially, yes, if a problem comes, you'll solve it that particular way. But what if you don't want to come into that problem itself, then there is a what works and what didn't work. That again has references to all the case studies. So everything that you see in this linked, the flow chart, the risks, the work, what works, what didn't work, and the case studies and the blogs that we have written. So that, and then there are other things that I should talk about also. That, for example, the last addition to the section, to the book was a checklist for all the startups to see where you are. So again, there's a bunch of questions that are asked to them about the entire life cycle and asking them, have you looked at this? Are you doing this correctly? And they can say yes or no to that. And then that tells them where they are in that journey or how they are doing in that journey. So that is, in fact, was a specific suggestion from one of our reviewers. And he was saying that it's not a playbook if you don't have some kind of a brainstorming exercise kind of a space. And that's what we provided with that checklist. So founders could go to that checklist and exactly find out where they are, first of all, and whether they are doing things right or not. That is the kind of thing. So this, as Sanjay was mentioning earlier, is more for the founders who are getting onto the same journey and helping them where it benefits the most. There is no point trying to tell them these things after they have done the mistakes and so on. So the point is that if you have written them down based on our experience, that was our idea. If we have seen 80 odd startups, out of which more than 10% were these kind of startups, can we identify patterns and mention them in that, so that anybody starting that? So to your last question, Dina, that you're asking, we've thought that this could be a great way to expand our footprint. We would be known, for example, to the 80 startups that we worked with over the last 10, 11 years, whatever it is. But with a book that is published, it can go to multiple nooks and corners of the country. Hopefully, it's a virtuous cycle that gets created, that many more startups now apply to PIC for our programs because now they have read about this, and that increases our footprint also. So this indeed, to your point, Dina, is an opportunity to scale ourselves beyond the startups that we are only mentoring till date. So this is indeed for the scale.
The other point which is there is, this has been an effort done by only the mentors who are not necessarily experts in this particular area. This is also an opportunity for us to get the experts into it. And when we look at, as I mentioned, we are talking waste management, waste to wealth as a broad topic. It can go into very specific. It could be plastic waste, it could be metal waste, it could be any other type of waste. And there could be experts in this room or in a larger context who can then come and say we could do something more detailed along with you, so that other startups in this particular area can get a sense of what they can actually learn from this and replicate. So I think that's the primary objective, and the way they have actually picked up few examples. There are about seven examples in this book. There are 7 examples which are there, and each of them they have just identified the patterns, and then based on that they have abstracted it out. It's no way complete story about that particular startup.
Yes.
And the important aspect is, as they mentioned, we have seen the cohort that they create is very limited. Probably they have access to a smaller set. If we have to be a think tank and we have to create certain things and impact at a larger scale, I think we have at least a platform or a reach to a larger set. I was also mentioning about CSR heads which are there. CSR heads will potentially look at, hey, they are doing some work in this particular area. Waste is a very critical area for us to focus on, and hence the partnerships could increase. So I would say that it is a good opportunity or a platform that we have created with this type of a publication as such. So hope I address this question, your concern that you raised, that we were discussing primarily what is this particular framework, how is this evolved, what is the roadmap, and as a point which we looked at is, there are still areas which we are looking for feedback on what should be the next thing, how should it be arranged, what are the areas which we are missing out on, and those are the things which we thought we could discuss and bring out. And I'll take few more questions as well once we are done with our discussion.
Sure. Yep.
So Giri, last one, I think this is for a roadmap. So since we are getting into the point, what next? What is it that you feel are the shortcomings? And we were going to discuss this based on, this was put together with the effort that all of you put together. Where do you feel we are still missing out? Any feedback that you got from the founders itself who have read this book and said, look, here are things which we should have covered. And how do you plan to use this playbook as a model within the Social Innovation Lab? What are the other plans? Are there other playbooks which are in the working?
Sure, thanks. So indeed, there are a number of shortcomings, some of which I mentioned in our internal discussion only they came out. And that's why we added those sections or created those linkages from one section to the other, and leveraged the blogs that had already been written, so on and so forth. So all of those things were the shortcomings that were found even while we were working on it. But I must say that I mentioned this point about the checklist. That was given by Mr. Vijay Mahajan of Rajiv Gandhi Foundation. He and his colleague Jeet, we were one of the reviewers of this. And there were, excuse me, there were other reviewers as well. I mean, Hitendra was mentioned, Dr. Kelkar, but these are our own people. Vijay and Jeet really worked on it in the sense, Jeet actually workshopped this particular book. So he went to a group and he workshopped this. He used this book to see how it works with the founders there. And so they had very, very great feedback. So one of the things that I mentioned was that, if it is a playbook, then it should be some exercise, some brainstorming space, and that's why that checklist got added after that feedback. The other thing that I mentioned was about case studies. So he said, these are not case studies. that we had in the end. And he was right. I mean, if you write case studies, there have to be a lot of numbers, what happened, you must study them in detail. And then we realized that we were using the word case studies quite loosely. These were examples that we were giving just to let them know. And go back to the earlier point that I mentioned, letting the founders know that there are other people like you who are doing this. You are not alone in your journey. A lot of times, startup founders feel that they're alone in their journey, whereas there are other people who are doing that, have done that, been there, done that kind of a thing, and they could help. That's why we have given their contacts also. So that is the other point that got added, that it was not case studies and so on. So the shortcomings were on that side. So yes, there could be a lot more formality to it, for example. And what we are really seeking, and you have given a lot of feedback, I'm hoping to get, and we are already getting from the audience as well. That feedback is very important to see what we can do better in the next round. Already we are thinking of the next one. Of what we could write as a similarly observed pattern in all those 80 startups, which is coming quite repeatedly often, and then we can work on those particular, that particular types of startups and come up with another playbook like this. Surely we will, fix a lot of these things that have been commented upon, but again, it will retain its experiential character rather than being too academic, because that's not what we are doing. But we will certainly try to cover the things that have been pointed out to us in the next journey. And this is journey. See, one of the things is that we could strive for perfection in this playbook and try to make it as perfect as possible. You're exactly right, Dina, in saying that the circular economy is not well covered. Now, why is that? Because it's based on the startups that we had, correct? So if we had started with the premise of writing a playbook, then yes, we have to have circular economy and so on and so forth. It has come from a different point, different origin, and that's why some of these areas may not be covered. You made that observation correctly. So those are the shortcomings that we will have. It will remain an experiential kind of thing, but we will try to make it more and more useful. Ultimately, the point has to be that it has to be useful to the founders. And if they can use it even without being in touch with us, just with this book, great. But if they get in touch with us, then that virtuous cycle gets started, because our effort also gets strengthened quite a bit then in that case. So if there is one takeaway from this session, then we are keenly looking for feedback from anybody who's interested in this space, especially the founders. That's what I would say. Yes.
Yeah, so we'll open up for questions from the audience. We'll take 2 or 3 questions in a punch so that we can address those. If there are specific questions or suggestions, please feel free.
Thank you very much. My name is Ashish Vaishnav. I've actually, after a long corporate career, got into a space of waste management and trying to still understand it. One of the things which obviously you mentioned about some of these companies which you have taken as examples, essentially from a playbook point of view of giving the learnings. One aspect which I'm talking of a little going higher, that finally we are looking at an impact make also. What is the impact being done? Sorry, but I may not be as well informed, but some of this examples of a t-shirt being made, or I even heard multi-layered plastic goggles coming up, sunglasses and all, words like Chanel coming in. They become very upscale, it's upcycling and upscale. But if you look at waste as a problem at large, is it impacting that real problem which we have, that, the number of strewn waste you still see, even if APCSI is working in a city like Pune, forget everything else. So in terms of what is the quantum of impact your solution will have for helping this problem of waste at large? Yep, thank you so much.
I'm Abhay Nalavde. I used to work for Thermax, and I'm involved in energy, waste, environment, this kind of aspects. So first of all, it is very good that you have started this, because I have come across number of companies, startups and existing companies, who are thinking very strongly. And the reason for this is competition. I mean, competition is intensified. Global boundaries have vanished. There is no dearth of creativity. So here we are talking about, converting waste to wealth. First of all, then the question comes, why generate waste? Okay, what is generating waste? So there are a number of answers for this, But the two I have found out in dealing with a lot of startup companies who are doing extremely innovative work is, and I'll give one example of that, is before talking of recycling, or while we are talking of recycling, and it's essential that whatever we do, waste will be generated. So one question is, can we replace the process which generates waste? Can we replace the process that generates waste? That question when you ask, or whatever is generating waste, can you substitute that raw material? So this is found extremely interesting. Now, as you know, number of waste have been banned. One-use plastic is banned. So what the hell do we do? What do we do for all the TVs and refrigerators and everything is packed with thermocol? And it's a one-time waste. So what do we do? The moment that question comes, number of answers come. I'm currently involved with the KK, for example, apart from many other companies. And then I find that what one company is doing can help other company. This is very, very, and people don't know. The only people who will know is senior experienced people like us sitting here. And I'm using that experience. Because when you talk to one company, I told KK, okay, boss, if you are recycling waste, or they are talking about insulation using thermocol. So I said, insulation using thermocol compared to glass wool is very good, but it will catch moisture. So we have a company which will coat that thermocol with a heat resistance and moisture resistance chemical. So answers like that are huge. And I find the guys from India who have studied here in IITs, IIMs, and guys who have studied abroad have wealth of knowledge. And you throw the ideas to them and they lap it up like anything. I also find entrepreneurs are bothered about waste because every waste reduces your profit. So any waste reduction is increase in convergence profit. So I think there are a lot of things going in favor of managing waste, not creating waste, substituting processes. Okay? So it's far larger, but whatever you are doing is also very good. And I thank you for.
I think we will address this particular. Just to clarify, this is a group of people who are part of the Social Innovation Lab. They are largely supporting the startups. They don't necessarily have a theme on which they are working. They are working with startups which are across different areas.
Yeah.
They've taken the first step, identified one of the areas, and then they created a playbook.
Correct.
They are not necessarily focused on this as a topic as such. Okay, so just wanted to clarify that. But it's a very important element in your feedback that we will take into account, especially if there are multiple startups, because there could be other startups who could get inspired. Yeah. And we can give them the feedback that you can also look at what is generating waste as an area. But
yeah, and I think I would like to have a book just to read.
It should be available online as well.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll just wait for them to respond back. We'll come back to you.
I totally agree with your sentiment that this is just a drop in the ocean. I mean, the scale of the problem is so enormous. Our ambition is relatively limited. What we set ourselves to do is, we have helped 80 companies. Can we help 1,000 companies? So I think probably India needs 1 million companies. But our ambition is just, can we go from 80 to 1,000? And so this is sort of a small step in that direction. I think the question of impact, I think, is very interesting. One of the things we work with each company is to help them articulate, either in ESG goals or other measurable ways, what impact their progress is having. So I'll give you just one example to illustrate a point. We have a company called Pad Care. What they do is they recycle used sanitary pads. Quite successful. They've grown very fast, and they're probably all the marquee customers of India, top brands of India have deployed them. They have very strong dashboards on the impact they're having, either in CO2 reduction due to incineration, volumes of plastic recycled. And sanitary pads, for example, have extremely high cost imported absorbent polymer. So they are actually able to recycle that polymer into other industrial processes, and there's a huge demand for that absorbent polymer. So what we do is, we can't come up with like very general KPIs. So what we do is work with each company, get them started this measurement journey. And what is very brilliant about this example is they actually provide a report to the customer every year that feeds into the board report. So they are very happy to have this kind of very digitalized view of the impact. Now, question for us as a country is, how do you scale this to 10,000, 20,000, 500,000 entrepreneurs? And this is, to be honest, a very small, humble step in that direction. Hopefully over the next few years, as we have more insights and so on, we could probably share that knowledge. But one thing I learned living abroad and living here is that we need much stronger systems for recycling knowledge learned into the ecosystem. Because when I lived in Europe or US, I thought they had very good mechanisms for recycling knowledge and accelerating the journey of their own institutions. So this, I think, is sort of a move in that direction. We need a lot more effort. And personally, I'll be happy if 1,000 startups write to us over the next few months saying, oh, I saw this book, I realized I was making this mistake, I corrected that, and I'm on my journey. I think that would be a reasonable step for us.
My name is Anil Kulkarni, and I'm just reacting to the question that nothing's being learned here. I think the gentleman's left. The key word here is enabling. I think that is the main thing. The key word, what we do is we enable, right? Let me give you an example of circular economy where Earth Tattva, young guy out of NID, he came up with a patent of recycling ceramics. All you guys who want to make new bathrooms, right? You throw out the old commodes, and you don't know what happens to it. It just lies there for centuries, all right? Now, he came up with an idea of recycling that, all right? And he came to us for mentoring. Now, our job as mentors is to enable him to become successful. That's our job. We haven't got the idea, it's his idea. But he wanted to be mentored into becoming a successful company. That's what we do. So us mentors, whether it is financial discipline, whether it is route to market, we help him so that he becomes successful. Today, that young man has actually started becoming scalable. That's where he is today. So I think the key word that we should all remember here is enable. That's our role.
So a lot of points have been addressed. I would like to take that. Thank you, Abhay, for being here. First of all, I know we have known each other for quite some time, and you are the expert yourself in this. So you can do things to do the waste management and so on yourself. Whereas, like Anil was pointing out, like everybody else thinks in India also, that the next revolution is going to be brought by startups. And we come from that startup background, and we are just hoping that helping startup founders who are working in these particular areas should be promoted, and their story should be widely known, and so the other startups are encouraged. And if those number increase in orders of magnitude, that's what is going to solve the problem. So thank you for that, Abhay. And to Mr. Vaishnav, your point about the impact. So yes, waste is one of the KPIs and impacts, but for us, the impact is also how much employment was generated in the tribals, for example. So we are looking at that cross-section. We are not looking at any particular vertical or horizontal. We are looking at that cross-section, that on the one hand, you're solving the ecology environment problem, and yes, there has to be a metric for that, but you're also creating employment while doing that, and that is another metric that also is quite important. So it's a little bit of a different perspective than saying we are solving the waste problem. Which might be the impression because of the title, I think, but it is like Anil made it very clear that we are trying to build EEE startups is what we are trying to enable through this year.
Yeah, just a point, like I mentioned Pirul handicrafts, right? Who are the people working? These are the tribal women in Ranikhet and other villages in Uttarakhand. we asked the founders that what was the type of impact you were making on them. They said that the average earning of a woman in that thing was increasing by 1.5 to 2x, right? And obviously, those are important metrics which they say which we have to track, but also if we consider the impact of that, if they were operating with 10 women at the start of the year when they came to us, and now they have secured a large order for a pharmaceutical company in Bombay as for gift items. They have expanded their scale to 75, touching 100 women. That is the kind of impact which we see, right? So the simple answer to this is that we have to see what kind of impact is made based on the type of startup. Because we covered a EEE startup, which either had an impact on environment, it had an impact on ecology or on employment, the metrics are a little different in each case.
The reason for that is also the driver for that founder is different. We have mentioned that in the book also, that some people come from this background of helping tribals, for example, and you got to go with that. You're not changing the company, you're not changing the founder. And some people are coming with the waste problem in their mind. Some people are coming with the ecology problem in mind. Some people are coming with their employment problem in their mind. And we got to go with that and make sure that they're successful and sustainable and reach their goals at scale.
I might go first. So I've worked for government. Actually, my latest role has been in the New Zealand Government Ministry for Environment. And I'm actually an economist by training. I happen to get into the waste sector as my latest set of projects. So my question, I think maybe it was Sanjay who referred to earlier about feeding back to policymakers what policymakers should do. So I wanted to ask, based on your experience in the industry so far and the work that you guys have done so far with founders, etc., what are your observations on local, state, central government in India? And so you mentioned things like skilling and maybe raising awareness, so education in the wider population, because some things need to be tackled system-wide, and that can be only done with public investment and in the public sector. So I wanted your views on that side of things, which is clearly there's a lot of creativity, intelligence, smartness in the private sector domain in this country. But what can the public sector do in terms of contributing and coming to the party?
I would like to ask to Sanjay, you mentioned about like connecting with 5 incubators and like scaling this activity from 80 to 1,000. Can you elaborate that more? And we'll discuss this offline after like.
Yeah, I had 2 questions. I myself have started working startup, and where I've seen, most of the examples that you gave right now were of products that can be made from waste. Whereas if you look at it, what we find is for those people to find that segregated waste itself is an issue, right? So we try to work more on systems. And that's something I have found from PIC, that instead of a product I don't see that application or the startup support for a systemic approach towards changing this.
Yeah, so thanks for your question on the public policy side of it. I mean, our interactions, which, it's very obvious the government is seized on this problem of waste and dealing with the waste. But what we see is the innovation is happening with the founders, right? And our backgrounds are a bit biased. We didn't work for any government. We all come from corporate backgrounds and very action-oriented and very results-oriented. So we maybe that's a bit of a downside of our work, is we are very sort of focused on action, results, outcomes, etc. On the policy side, I think I've touched on 5 points. One is India has done a good job with the Startup India related basket of policies. Creating incubators. There's hundreds of incubators now. Magic is one of them. There's like lots of incubators, and a lot of support is building for founders, right? It's a journey of a country. And what we are saying is that it would be nice to focus on this theme also, because there are some very special aspects of these themes. And so just like we have incubators focused on the handicapped or the accessibility topics, we have incubators focused on biotech in Pune, for example. So there are these domain-specific incubators also being created. So one of the suggestions is to create these focused on these topics. The other thing we have also suggested is that we need like one incubator to champion the role of capturing the knowledge and circulating it nationally. So we have proposed that one of the incubators be given a 10 crore grant just to play that role of a lead. So for example, we have incubator in Pune that plays the role in the biotech space, for example. So we suggest that. Second is on capital formation. I think we see a lot of our companies struggling for capital. They're trying to raise capital, but this is not the hot topic with VCs and so on and so forth. So they really struggle to raise capital. Even the 2 crore, 4 crore, 8 crore kind of numbers are a bit of a difficult journey for them. So there are a lot of impact investors coming in India. I think we need to get this fund of fund impact and create probably a good 50,000 crores of capital mobilization through this fund of funds. I think that's one of the recommendations we have made. The third is on policy interventions, which is probably your area of interest. So, for example, EPR, extended producer responsibilities. These kind of policy interventions are there. We find also technical interventions very interesting, where you can say that, this product should have a mix of 30% recycled. But these kind of recommendations and interventions are all possible. They're all listed in the book. So, and the last is the market-making function. I mean, when I see other countries and the role the governments play, they play a very powerful role in market-making, right? Especially in China, for example. I mean, I know companies that scale dramatically in 5 years because they got a $500 million contract from the government, and suddenly we can't compete with that kind of scale. So I think we also suggest to government, I mean, I have been on the procurement journey with our own companies in this cohort. And I can tell you it's quite challenging. I mean, the main factor is time. I mean, companies don't have like 5 years, 4 years to wait. They need action in 1 year, 12 months, 16 months. I think time, the way the pace at which the government moves and the startups need to survive, I think from a cash flow perspective, etc., it's a big difference. I think it's an order of magnitude difference. So we have some recommendations on accelerating the procurement cycle also. But we're very happy to have a one-on-one discussion with you based on your experience in New Zealand and just absorb that for our next book, if possible.
Launched on electric car batteries and tires, and there's 6 more in the pipeline, so they're already on that journey.
Exactly.
And those sorts of things need to be done system-wide, because there's externalities in the language of economics. Private incentives and public incentives just don't line up with a lot of these things. And some of those things cannot be passed on to the end consumer, because then the pricing doesn't work out and the commercials don't work out. So that's where I see the public sector can really play a meaningful role.
Absolutely.
To, as you said, create markets, drive that change, where everyone shares the burden in sort of an equitable way, so that the costs are split, across a wide population.
Yes. Very happy to engage. Would love to talk to you about that.
Hey, I'll just make one observation that I was also approached by one startup on waste management, and they, at the end of 1 year of effort, they found that everybody was pursued as not very glamorous kind of a work. You see? And that's where I think the public sector must step in. It is not glamorous, it is for your survival. And I don't see any effort being made. I'll take an example of City of Bombay. If you go on the new road that they have constructed from Ghatkopar to road leading to New Bombay, on the left-hand side is the original waste management dump, and all you see is the smoke there. And people had come forward to tackle that issue, but the mafia is so strong there that they made sure it will not work.
So, ma'am, I'll just this thing. We've taken the feedback that the name is misguiding and the thing. Just once again to strengthen the point, we have highlighted the case studies or the examples of the startups who approached us, right? We have not gone and prescribed to any startup to take up an activity and this thing. So while your feedback on the segregation of waste is taken, if the startup did not come to us with that kind of problem, we didn't take that into account during the mentoring. So that was just a small clarification which I wanted to make. Along the system thing, yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I think that lady there has been waiting for.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, sorry.
So I wanted to ask you that. So I founded a company and we solve for climate and we also solve for waste. I mean, we develop solutions to solve for these problems. So as a social entrepreneur committed to creating impact and solving the problem in line with the question which sir posed, what do these founders do different? Because we want to, we are a business, so we need to sell, but we are committed to solve. So what is it that these founders do different, more, less, than the conventional businesses that you have experience of? And were you able to find any such commonalities?
Hello, my name is Swapnil Joshi and I'm actually the founder. So I got mentored by Pramod sir and Amit sir. So I will just give you my live example. So in 2020, in social innovation, I got selected in urban category, where my product is I upcycle old clothes into this kind of products. So when I have got mentored, my production was reached up to 60,000. But after mentorship under Pramod sir and Amit sir, I have reached now to 2.5 lakh. So they have, so this mentorship is not about only talking and numbers. So actually all, I think Iyer sir is also there, Pramod sir, Anil sir, all has visited my production unit. They have seen, Pramod sir has guided me that this is assembly level kind of production, so you need to improve that. And this way, from 60,000 to 2.5 lakh, I have reached in this 2 years of span. Regarding impact, I want to mention that in Pune, in last 5 years, we have collected 77,000 kg of old clothes, and we have produced almost 15,000 products, which already got sold. So we have zero stock in our store, means in each month. So that impact we have created. In month of June, we have exported our products to Australia. And next month, we are going to export it to the Netherlands. So this is the first sustainable brand in clothes. We are where we are selling our products out of India. And now these people are going to use our old clothes. So that level we have reached. And I think this book mentioned whatever the problems we have faced, which we have discussed with Amit sir, Pramod sir, and other mentors also. So this books focuses more that what problems we have faced, how to sell, how to increase the production, what is the branding strategy. I think Anil sir has guided me that there should be the 2 type of product category you should have, like premium category and normal category. And so all this is like a family for me, where they have guided me. They have, I think Pramod sir and Amit sir is just one-way call for me. And I share each and every success and even bad stories with them. So I think this book is about that, whatever we have faced, so we don't want the next startup should not face this problem. And regarding the book name, The Enabling Waste to Wealth and Circular Economy, according to me, when each and every startup is going to create the wealth, then only it will become a circular economy. So the circular economy is the ultimate output of each and every startup wealth. So that is according to me. Yes. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Neelam Bharadwaj. I live in New York, but my non-profit is in Pune for the last 23 years. So I've been very inquisitive about work of PIC, and it's my second meeting that I'm attending, and I find it very exciting and very good work. So I want to congratulate all the panel members' discussions. It's very important for people to be very open-minded. Now I'm 67 years of age, and so I can speak about social innovations very confidently. It takes time. It takes time. So there were some gentlemen got very upset and left the room. I wish he was here still to listen, to understand. You have to give your lifetime to achieve something. I work with people with disabilities in India. And those who are with spinal cord injuries, I first take them out of depression, which they are in number of years, and then give them the skills and then get them the jobs. It takes me 2 years to bring one family back on foot again. So it takes time. So it's my passion that I do it. So currently now we are also looking for people who can, like out of waste. We are working with Ecokari, the plastic waste that they are turning into bags. You must have heard about them. They were in the last meeting also in PIC. He's also trying to do some. So startups take time. So I don't think there's any reason to get frustrated. People who are committed, are passionate about doing something for the society because we are educated and we are having this interaction. And very nicely, something has come up that we need to disseminate in a much, much better way. This book is not, people like me who don't have time, don't read books, right? But we have experience, so I didn't have to really bother too much about the book. I came for a different purpose, right? So people are sitting here, a lot of students are here thinking that maybe they will read a book and they'll become an entrepreneur. Doesn't work like that, we all know. All the books, whether they are abroad or in India, they're all reference books. And all the research, I have a number of international awards. I've done a lot of work on squatting position of delivery. I have a lot of innovations. I am an innovator, so that's why I come for these meetings. So thank you very much for this, and I would love to be part of the think tank, and if any other work that I can help PIC to do in future. So this is a wonderful meeting and good experience for me. And you did the rest of the job. We have a live experience sitting here. So he should have been the first one to answer most of the questions. Then there won't be a lot of, commotion in the room. So thank you very much, and looking forward to connecting with all of you.
Thank you so much, and you'll be happy to know that the next playbook is actually about disabilities and healthcare. Yes, that's the second largest pattern that we saw, and we are working exactly on that. And I agree with your solution. The founder should have been the first speaker here rather than us, and that would have set the tone for the event. But I do want to take up the question that the gentleman over there asked about what is different between social entrepreneurs and the for-profit entrepreneurs. You'd be actually happy to know that most of the companies that come to us today are for-profit companies. So it is not that there is a separate segment for these companies. Most of them are for-profit companies. Yeah.
You got my question wrong. What are for-profit social entrepreneurs doing differently? That's my question.
What they're doing differently is
what are for-profit social entrepreneurs doing differently?
The for-profit social entrepreneurs are what they're doing differently is picking the problems that are different from what we would otherwise do. I would solve some problem for an industry or something like that if I'm a for-profit, and yes, of course, I'll get money. Like I probably said earlier, I would never have somebody who's thinking of creating employment for...
One second, that is known. The fact that we have chosen a tough problem is known.
Not a tough problem, a different problem.
Or a different problem.
Yes.
A social problem. What am I doing differently to solve it? While I have chosen the medium of business, so on the one hand I need to sell, but I'm committed to solve.
Yes.
So what am I as a founder doing differently?
I don't know why, if you have to do things differently. For example, Pad Care is a technology solution. They were actually incubated in this Pencil Venture Center, build that technology. I'll give you another example of Crest that is mentioned in the thing. What are they doing? They picked the problem of these stocks being burnt in the northern India, rice stocks being burnt. What did they do? They actually created a technology of creating wood particle boards from them and packaging material from them. This is actually technology that they built. So yes, a problem has to have a technology solution or a workflow solution or anything like that, like any other business. So I think the main difference is choosing the problem. For me, I would not have chosen the problem of rice stocks, for example, if I was only for profit. The solution could come in different ways. It could come from technology. It doesn't have to be, solution doesn't have to be different. Although maybe the people that you are serving with this are different. So you've got to have a different connect there. So for example, you're talking to, let's say you're having a social media startup or something like that, and then you're talking to teenagers or something like that. So the people that you're communicating with are different. Here, the people that you're communicating with are different. But otherwise, depending on the problem, the solution could come out of various different things such as technology or workflow or anything like that.
I'll just say something. I believe we need to do a lot of things differently. The reason is because we are playing the game of economics, which is far different than the game which is being played currently. And which is where my question was actually coming from. We are trying to solve for a world sans fossil energy and sans fossil material and trying to address climate simultaneously, which is why I was trying to probe if at all, and I believe you haven't found such any different other pattern from your answer. I mean, just
Okay.
yeah.
Non-profit does not mean for losses. Yes. Non-profit does not mean for losses. Social entrepreneur is also a business. Their cause is different. So they are also for profit. So why will their problems be different?
The problem will be different. Solutions need to be the same.
Solutions, yeah.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Salil Wag. First of all,
Take this last question. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank you all because of this for this very interesting inputs. I have one question. I just wanted to know whether you have any planning to publish this book in Marathi or any regional languages so that a large number of people will get benefited out of that.
So my name is Neeraj Thakur and I'm heading this social innovation lab at PIC. So today we visited tribal commissioner, and after interacting with him, we understood if we want to have a better reach within Maharashtra itself, we need to come up with the regional languages. So we will be working on it, and within a 2 months time, you will have the similar version in multiple languages as well. Thank you so much.
So let me thank my panelists out here as well as all the authors who have joined. Ram, I didn't realize you were there. But it's been so wonderful. And I think within the short time period that you guys put this thing together, I think it's a good start. And I feel there is a lot more potential. There are fantastic inputs coming in from different people. I think we should, one of the things which I said was, when I looked at a lot of these startups which are from waste to wealth, there were a lot of women in it. And we didn't have any women in the panel or the author book, as well as the startups which are there. So I would strongly recommend that we relook at that. And ma'am has already offered, and she is going to be part of your team. So would love to have that. So again, thanks a lot for being here today. I'm sure we could have a lot more discussions. And also, as Mr. Vaishnav said, topic of waste in the city of Pune is being talked about. You meet Mr. Sudhir Mehta, you will spend probably a month with him on that topic. So with that, thank you. Over to you.
I would like to invite all the authors on the stage for the photograph. On behalf of Pune International Center, I, Samruddhi, would like to express our sincere gratitude to the panelists, Mr. Amit Bhargava, Mr. Gireendra Kasmalkar, and Mr. Sanjay Kanvinde, and the moderator of the session, Mr. Dinanath Kholkar, for their incredible discussion on the book Enabling Waste to Wealth and Circular Economy. For a fact, I definitely know that this playbook will help many founders in this field who are working in this field. And I would like to thank all the authors, PIC members, and the audience being here today. Before we conclude, I would like to inform you about our upcoming flagship event, the film festival being organized from 9th February to 11th February. So you may see all the details on the screen. With this, I conclude the session today. Thank you.